Hello, and welcome back to Decklist Things. And today, we're going to be diving into Shanks, less gameplay-wise and more kind of as a concept. I want to talk about the deck and kind of this is a tank guide. I mean, it's a tank guide. I'll just be blunt. This is a tank Shanks guide for OP12. Now that we've settled into the meta, and I have settled into my deck list. This is what I'm running for OP12. I don't intend to change it. I'm really comfortable with all my ratios, and I feel like this is the best it's going to get for me for tank with how I play this deck. So let's dive into it. First off, you have our leader. When your opponent attacks, you may give up to one of your opponent's leader characters minus 1,000 power for the turn. This is a very strong effect. I'll dive more into it when we get into our matchups because it's obviously relevant to the opponent's leader. But just think of it as a 1k counter. It's at its best when your opponent is swinging 5k and you don't have to use a card to get out of it, right? I'm going to remove him for now just so our deck kind of lines up a little bit better here. But yeah, just keep Shanks in mind. So next, I run 8 searchers. I run 7, not 8. I'm wrong list. I run 7 searchers. If you can fit an 8th one in, that's good. I personally just opt for 7 for spacing. Why do I run 7 searchers? Because most decks in this meta, like relevant decks, Green Purple Luffy, Green Zoro, they're all running upwards of 8 searchers, right? Green Purple's running like 12 to 16 searchers, depending on if you count Robin, right? I mean, 4 Event, 4 Nami, 4 Zoro Juro, 3 Robin, it's on KO search. Also, like 4 of the boat, they're mad consistent. And with how varied this meta is, you need to be able to find your pieces for any given matchup when you need them. And for that, 7 searchers is going to be optimal. There are going to be matchups where I don't need Lucky Roo, or I don't need Shanks, or I really, really need Yasa, or I really, really need Rush Shanks, but I don't need KO, right? And in those matchups, I need to be able to find certain cards and also skip past the ones I don't need. And the more searches I have, the less likely I am to see the cards I don't want, and more likely I am to see the cards I do want. Now, with so many searchers, you don't want to run that many unsearchable cards, right? And not because you don't want to whiff. This deck pretty much never whiffs. But because I'm not going to see Marco that often, or I'm not going to see Dragon that often, or I'm going to whiff past Igloo or Uta. And that's just kind of the nature of the deck. These cards are very good, but they're not as nearly as required as something like Shanks, or 9-cost Shanks, right? Or Yasa, or Lucky or Beckman. So yeah, I run 7 searchers. I want to see consistency, and with how varied the meta is, I just feel like it's important. Up next, we have 8 searchable 2Ks, a total of 2Ks total, but 8 searchable ones. Lime Juice is very powerful. Hongo is also very powerful. Hongo is a card I like to drop early, just like on 3. Generally speaking, it comes in handy in most matchups. There's usually going to be a 7k body you want to remove, or there's going to be like an 11k body you want to remove, like a Nell or Bonnie, right? Or maybe there's like an 8k or something you need to hit with Beckman, or like a Beer Luffy you need to hit with Beckman, right? A Rush Luffy, a Sanji Pudding. Hongo is very good. I like to be able to drop Hongo early game consistently if I need to, and that's why I run 4. But also, I like to be able to counter with this, and late game I want to see it again. Which is also why I run 4 Lime Juice, because Lime Juice is a card you play when you're closing out matches. If I counter with the Lime Juice early, and I'm only running 2, if I give 1 just for like a 7k swing, right? They swing 7, I minus 12 leader, and then I give this Lime Juice. I only have 1 left in my deck. And, like, that's not great odds of seeing another, right? That's just not, it's unlikely to happen. And if I need this to close out a game, I need to see it. So I run 4. It's nice that it's super searchable. It's also just generally like one of the best 2Ks in red. Like if we just search up C2000, right? 2000 counter. We go to red. Your other contender is like Otama and this 2K Sanji, which just isn't good in this meta. And like Chopper. Chopper is great. Chopper's a good 2K. He's not that great. You have Shanks now, so like the whole 4-cost 6k blocker thing is a lot less relevant. At least the spot is, because we obviously have one. And Otama's cool, but it really only interacts with Beckman in this deck, and Divine Departure in very niche scenarios. But like, this combo is great, but I prefer just having more 2Ks. And the fact that these are all searchable means that I can often turn my searchers into 2K counter if I need to. Now, up next we have Lucky Roo. You know Lucky Roo, you probably hate Lucky Roo if you don't play Shanks, and if you do, you probably love him. Blocker, on KO, if your leader is a Red Pirates type, you have to one of your opponent's characters with an original power of 6,000 or less. That hits a lot of things. There is worth noting that there's a lot of matchups you don't want to see this card. If we just look at really, most importantly, you're going to be hitting this Luffy. This is the card Lucky Roo's usually slamming into, honestly. You really want to see this card in the Rayleigh matchup. Rayleigh is incredibly hard if you do not see Lucky Roo. It's a very strong card. Now, outside of this Rayleigh matchup, it's not as powerful. You're not going to be playing it in the blue-purple Luffy. You really shouldn't be playing it in the green Zoro, in all honesty. It's only like hitting Cavendish and maybe like a Rogue Koshiro or something. But into Bonnie, it's good. Into most decks that rely on some mid-game piece, it's very good. And in Mirror, it's also good because you're popping Shanks or Yasop, or maybe a Marco if they don't have an event in hand, right? Or at least you're pulling an event out of hand. Generally speaking, I like Lucky Roo. He's a good 4-of, he has counter, and in the matchups you need to see him on curve. So running less than 4 makes that less likely. Up next, we have 4-cost Shanks. 4-cost 6k power. Blocker, on your opponent's attack, you may trash one card from your hand, give to one of your opponent's characters or leader -2,000 power during this turn. So, along with our leader, and as well as this card we'll get to in a minute, this reduces power of 4 turns. So, most importantly, you are ditching a brick and turning it into 2k counter. That's powerful. But against cards that restand, like our everyone's favorite deck, Green Zoro, you're subtracting for turn. So if let's say he swings 8k into something, right? Or 7k, or whatever. Usually 8k, right? Because they're restanding. I can pop leader, bring him down to 7, and then pop this and bring him down to 5. Which you're often doing, and then you can defend him, right? If they swing into it. Or something. It's good, right? It is nice to easily and freely defend board and get upwards of 6,000 counter into a restanding body. But in something like Zoro, this one for example, you're getting a ton of value out of it, and most commonly, you are getting extra value into this Rush Luffy. If Green Purple is going for game, this is usually going to be swinging at you twice for like 9k or 8k, and bringing that down from 9 to like 6 or 5, or even 4 if you have like 2 of them on the field, or you have Kamakura Tososhi in hand. It's really powerful. It's hard to get value out of a character that restands when it's restanding from 3k to 3k. It's just not that great. Now, do I think this is like a really key card? Yes, absolutely. You want to see this on 4 into almost every deck. In the decks where you're not playing Lucky Roo on 4 or 5, you are usually playing Shanks or Marco, but usually Shanks. This is one of the best cards in the deck. You should be swinging it. Keep that in mind. This is a vanilla stat line that's very good for an early game piece. Don't just treat it as a blocker. It's just a 4/6 beater is powerful, especially in something like Zoro. That matchup specifically, you should always be swinging your Shanks. You should be swinging everything at Zoro, just to try and keep their hand size low, so they're not stacking up counter for late game. Now, up next, we have Marco and Yasop. They cover both at the same time, because they're effectively similar cards. They're both 5-cost 6k, 1,000 counter. Marco is not searchable, but Yasop is. Marco on play KOs a 3k or less, and on KO you may trash one event card from your hand to play him back from the trash as rested. Ooh, so 3k or less, what are you hitting? A lot of the chumps that Green Zoro plays, Koshiro, Hiyori, Koina, even like a Perona Searcher, maybe, you're mainly playing it for the on-play. You can pop just the annoying removal pieces, protection pieces. You can hit the 2-cost Uta in black, you're hitting every chump blocker in the game, and moving forward there's just going to be a lot of those because the meta is shifting towards big bodies. So yeah, I like Marco, he's sticky. It's really, if you really want another mid-game piece of this deck, and it's really either this Marco or the 5-cost Rayleigh. And as good as this card is, I don't think it's nearly as strong as Marco. I think Marco's better. This effect, the on-play effect, is very niche. It's not super often your opponent has 2 or more characters with an original power of 1,000 or more, and also you're in a good position to drop this card. So yeah, and we already have a 6k blocker in the deck as well. So I choose Marco. He's good. He's not like the greatest card ever. He's one of the more cuttable ones, but in general, I do very like his presence. And being a kind of good stuff deck, he is part of the quote-unquote good stuff. And we have Yasop as well. On play up to 1 of your leader gains 1,000 power until the end of your opponent's next turn, so you become a base 6k. And Dunton's when attacking, up to 1 of your opponent's characters gains minus 1,000 power for the turn. This card you mainly run for the when attacking to combo with backbend to remove 7ks. And when this goes off, it's crazy. But often it's not going to. And being a 6k leader is strong, especially in certain decks, but I think generally speaking Marco's better. This card's also very searchable, so with 7 searchers, like, I'm bound to see him in a game if I want to, usually, like, statistically speaking, right? You could run more. You can go, like, 2 Marco, 3 Yasop, but, well, I think, generally speaking, 2 Yasop's appropriate. Even in more control-focused lists, they're only running, like, 2 Yasop. A lot of matchups, you're also going to be playing Yasop into, like, the 9-cost Shanks for a reduced price. So it's nice to have like the 6k power into a 7k power leader, just to keep as much count in your hand as possible. But yeah, he's just a generically good 5 cost with a okay effect both ways that has their positions to be good, but more often than not is going to be counter power because we have 2 much stronger 4 or 5 down plays. And Marco is often taking priority as well. Now 6 cost Uta is a 2k blocker with 4,000 power, and if you have a character with 10,000 power or more, get this card in your hand minus 4 cost. This is your main 10k power unit you're going to be getting this cheap off of, playing this for 6, and then playing Uta for 2, and then holding 2 on open for your common character Soshi / 10-layer Igloo is a great defensive turn. And setting up these blockers like after a 9-cost Shanks, so you can play into one of your 10 costs and be defended, is a very common line I take, or I see other people taking, right? So you can play this card safely, because you are at your most vulnerable when this 10 cost comes down. Yeah, not a lot to say here. It's a good 2k, it's a blocker, and it's cheap, most of the time. It's a great card, I run 4. This is one of the things Tank pivots around, just being able to play a 2-for-4 blocker that has 2k counter. It's good. Up next, we have Ben Beckman. This is a good, just standard, searchable Shanks card. 7 cost 7k with 1k counter. On play, you trash a 6k or less. You're hitting Cavendish, you're hitting Carrot, you're hitting everything in Rayleigh, you're hitting most cards, you know, the moving like forward, you're hitting like 4 cost Marco. And because it's trash, you're getting around on KOs. You know, you can remove a Marco and not have to worry about the on KO. Or you can remove this Shanks just for free because it's a pain. Maybe you can combo it with Yasop and hit, you know, Sanji Pudding. But really, this is just one of your better, this is pretty much like one of the best 7 non-plays in the game for red, for 7 cost. Very strong card, even in control lists, like even aggro lists probably run this card. A lot of decks in general run this card. It's very, very good. Again, not a whole to say here, very simple. Not a whole lot of, like, combo going on here. Now, into our top end. I run 4 different boss monsters. I run 2 Dragon, 3 of the 9-cost Shanks, 2 KO Shanks, and 2 Rush Shanks. Now, why? 2 Dragon is good in this meta. There's a lot of 7k bodies that swinging 9 and 2 is just good, but also being able to have that little burst of aggression, or being able to get like a nice sneaky lethal that your opponent wasn't expecting because you have a Dragon in hand, is very good. Now, I do only run 2. You don't want to see this all the time, but I think the times you do see this, if you have the Spare Dawn to play it, and because it costs 8, you can hold Dawn open for like an Igloo, it's very, very good. Now, I also think our other top end is generally, like, sorry, let me phrase that. So, 9-cost Shanks is generally better. Rush and KO Shanks are situationally better. Dragon is always going to be good. He is very rarely going to be amazing, but he is almost never going to be bad. So just keep that in mind. He's a good top end boss monster. You could run 8-cost Rayleigh in the slot. The only issue I have with Rayleigh is, like I said, it's kind of a 7k body meta, and Rayleigh's not removing something in this specific deck. You're not going to remove like a Tashigi or a Sanji Pudding or a Beer Luffy, right, with this Silver's Rayleigh. It's still good. You're still getting like 5k counter on it and establishing a big guy, but I prefer Dragon's immediate added pressure. 9-cost Shanks, on play, if your leader is a regular Pirates type, your leader gains plus 2,000 power until the end of your opponent's next end phase. As well as that, if your opponent has a character with 8,000 base power or more, get this card in your hand minus 3 costs. So it costs 6. As far as 8,000 power characters go, we can just search that up directly. Most importantly, you have Hody Jones and Mihawk. Dex won't place on curve because this card's incredibly powerful, and Hody Jones is also incredibly powerful. But being able to drop this in response is strong. You are developing a 9-cost 10k for 6, and you're becoming a 7k leader for added pressure. Outside of green, you also have Rayleigh, Garp, pretty much every blue Kuzan card. This 7-cost Odin, when this releases in the West, is also going to be a very common target. Luffy Taro and Purple Katakuri as well, for what they're worth. 8-cost Katakuri in like the Enel matchup, and Jack/Dragon in Koala and Lucci/Sakazuki. So, grab Jack. A lot of good AK targets in this meta. Becoming a 7k leader into most of those decks is kind of backbreaking for them to deal with. And developing a 9-cost is hard for removal decks, especially when you're only paying 6 for it. This card's just good. Is it the greatest thing ever? No. But much like Dragon, it's very rarely going to be a bad play for you. And being able to play for 6 and hold on open for Igloo to, counter 2 9k swings after, or counter a 12k swing. You save a lot of, you remove a lot of pressure just with this combo. And the 2-cost Uta slides in there very cleanly as well, after you've played Shanks, to develop a very, very cheap blocker, to play into your 10 costs better. Speaking of your 10 costs, what do? Shanks on play, KO to one of your opponent's characters with 10,000 power or less. You're killing all the bosses, you're killing all the Nell's bodies, most of Bonnie's boss monsters, you're killing Mihawk, you're hitting anything Kuzan plays. It's great. It's just a great card. Could you run 3? Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people actually do run 3. I only run 2 because in my opinion it's not the focus of this deck. And it's kinda niche, but it's still a very, very strong card, and very, very worthwhile, and very, very important as a 2-off, at least. Now, Rush Shanks, on the other hand, is a 10-cost 12k with Rush, and while it exists, your opponent's entire field is minus 1,000 power. This is better into decks like Rayleigh, or even Mihawk as well. This is also very good to Mihawk, or sorry, not Mihawk, Zoro. Being able to just develop this and have it stick, especially if you're safe to do so, is great. Their aggression is severely limited, and any matchup where you can't play KO Shanks, you pretty much can play Rush, assuming you're in the position to do so. You keep that in mind. Yeah, it's just top end. Really, there's not a lot to talk about here. They're good boss monsters. These are some of the best boss monsters in the game, card for card, and this monster loss of power also comes in handy when removing things. Having some field lets you hit as long as you're putting with your Beckman, or like a 10-cost Enel with your KO Shanks. So it's just, I run 2 and 2. I think more of either is a little unrealistic with deck space, especially if you want to keep these 2 dragons in, and I very much so do. Up next, we have our 2 counter events. Divine Departure, 3k power for leader, or you KO an 8k or less. This is mostly for 7k removal on 6 Dawn. Removing green-purple Luffy's first taunt you putting is incredibly punishing for them. Or removing an 8-cost Mihawk when you're trying to go for lethal, or just in general if you have a decent board setup already. Removing Tashigi, which is very realistic with this card, or removing Luffy Taro, right? 8-cost Katakuri. There's just any Kuzan button. There's so many 8Ks in this meta. Anything you want to hit with Shanks, you can also hit with this. You could run more of this. I don't think it's realistic because you want 8k bodies to stick for this effect. 7k bodies though, this is what you're using this on almost all the time. You're hitting Green Smoker, for example, is important, or hitting Cavendish on 6. And it's also the best 6-Dawn removal we really have. Other than Marco for chumps, if you want to hit a decent sized on-curve 5-cost body, you need Divine Departure. But past 6, it's very slow, and it's just being used as counter. What matchups do you want to see this card in? Bonnie, if you're going second. Most decks, if you're going second, really. Green-purple, Bonnie. It's even good for blue-purple to remove a Katakuri they play on curve. Good for Kuzan if they're not running the 1-cost Resonante to defend their bodies. They very rarely do. Generally speaking, I really like this card, and I definitely think it's worth running. Up next, we also have Kamakura Tososhi. This is a plus 2,000 power for battle and minus 2,000 power for turn. Getting to spread out 5k power, especially when you're already a 7k leader, if you got the combo off, is incredible. You are taking almost no damage that turn, and even with you can have a ton of dot open and have a suspiciously low amount of cards in hand, and still have a ton of counter, just because this card is up 1 card for 5,000 power. It's so strong. I really can't express enough how powerful this card is, and although it's a little, I guess you call it underrated, I think people will overlook this card in favor of the 2-cost Red Hawk. I think this card's really bad. I think this card's actually terrible. It's a little better if you're running Rayleigh, but this card is just not worth it in my opinion. KOing a 4K or less doesn't come up that often. Even with like Shanks or power reduction on your opponent's turn, you can hit like up to a 7 somewhat consistently, and you're still getting 4K power out of it. Igloo's spread is much more relevant, especially with the reduction per turn when your opponent is trying to go for like a big lethal with Zoro or something. And generally speaking, if you have the Dawn open for this card, you are not dying that turn, unless you're in like a really bad position. Kamakura Dasoshi is very powerful, and kind of just is very core to the idea of the tank build, along with Shanks and Uta. And these 3 cards are really what make up the trifecta that is tank. So yeah, that's the deck list. Let's dive into some curves. Where I like to go first, or where I like to go second. Let's check it out. Let's check out some matchup curves, and I'll talk about how I play those matchups respectively. So yeah, let's get right into that. Okay, so this is this is a filler tab. Don't worry about this one at the bottom. I had to get a poor formatting. So this is my perception of the general meta you will face with One Piece. If a deck isn't on here, you're pretty much just going second. But everything on here is this is how I play the matchups. This is what I take against these leaders. So the obvious ones are the ones you go second for. Teach, Luffy, green purple, Sakazuki. Okay, so Teach likes first, but I prefer second to Teach. They can hit their removal curve going first, and like that sucks, but it's such a boned matchup, it doesn't really matter what you go. Blue purple Luffy, I like going second to force their triple ramp going first. It's like a 4% chance for them to hit it, and then you also just have your boss monsters on curve, you don't have to wait as long. I much prefer going second for this matchup. Green purple Luffy, you go second, so they can't go Zorojuro into Sanji Pudding plus Zorojuro into Sanji Pudding / Sugitaro Sanji Pudding, because if they hit that, you lose. It's over. At least going second, you can divide apart to the first Sanji Pudding, and then on their second one, you can, like, develop a dragon or something, because you're going on 8 Dawn, right? Generally speaking, second is way better for this matchup. Sakazuki, as well as Lucci, both like to go second. It's very important for them to hit their curve, hit Kuzan on 4, into, like, removal on 6, into Jack, into Kuzan, right? If they're not running the Kuzan build, then they're running something like Boa, right? And Boa, you definitely want to take off of curve. If they're hitting Boa into your, like, 6, or if they're hitting Boa on 6/7, like, being able to drop a 9-cost Shanks in response to that's very strong. But generally speaking, just take second from here. You get to Divine Departure their Kuzan, which is more than enough for the matchup. Zoro, I like second because 4-cost Shanks on 4 is really important for that matchup, and 4-cost Shanks into a Yasop and a bunch of swings into, like, a Beckman with Yasop and then more swings is very strong. Smoker is, again, kind of iffy. I haven't played too much of this in OP12, but second for them, so they can't go, like, Sanji plus Leader Effect into Smoker into Mihawk plus, like, another Smoker or something. That curve sounds horrendous for us to deal with. Going first, they might drop a Hody on 7. You can almost respond with a 9-cost Shanks, so that's not nearly as bad. But yeah, Lucci, we went over Sakazuki, same thing. Go second, so they can't play Kuzan on 4, and if they do, you have Divine Departure for it. Or worst case scenario, you can play Lucky Roo on 4, and if they Kuzan on 5, then you can kill it next round. They remove your Lucky Roo. Lucky Roo is way better for Lucci than it is for Sakazuki, because Sakazuki will often bomb deck your Lucky Roo, but at least with Lucci, excuse me. This is Lucci, they have to KO it. They don't have much trash outside of Nightmare Luffy and Brook, and no one's running Brook in this deck anymore, not the 6-cost anyway. We have Blue Yellow Nami. This deck just really likes their second curve. You can go first in this matchup if they're not running Teach. Like, first is probably better, but if they are running Teach, you get very punished if they get to go second. When the young girl comes out as well, you're definitely going to want second. But for now, just take second in this matchup. Throw them off their curve. They're not going to hit like Cavendish, Robin, Kid. They are kind of the aggressor in the matchup, and the longer the game goes on, the better you are, the better spot you are in, probably. This matchup is just kind of weird. It's very pilot dependent. If you're playing into a really good pilot who has a great deck for the matchup, running a lot more Red Rocks and like kids and general rush bodies like the 8-cost Loopy, it's probably going to be harder. But and if they hit their curve as well, that's gonna be tough. But generally speaking, going second, this matchup should be more than manageable. I'm gonna tell you take second, so they can't high roll you with Toniyasu on 2 into like an Onami 10k banish swing, or sorry, an Izo 10k banish swing. You just can't handle that. Going first, they swing 8 at you on 3, and then you just take it for cards, and then you can counter whatever they're swinging on 5 or whatever, because you have blockers set up by that point, right? You have the 4-cost Shanks on curve, and they can't really big banish swing you. It solves most of your issues. Green Yellow Law, you take second, so they can't develop a Cavendish on 4. They really like their second curve, and then if they want to start playing like 7-cost Law, you just spam 9-cost Shanks with victory. This matchup's mostly plays itself. Marco is good for moving beige, and then Lucky Roo and Beckman will handle their major bodies, and their bigger things like Kid and Law can just stick, honestly. Letting us spam the 9-cost Shanks over and over again is more than enough for the matchup. Silver's rarely you go second, because they don't get to play Luffy on curve, and you get to play Lucky Roo, and Lucky Roo answers their upcoming Luffy turn really well, and then on like 6 Dawn, you can develop like the 4-cost Shanks or a Marco or something to remove a threat. And then on 8, you go Beckman. And then on 10, if you have the life, you can play a Rush Shanks. Or you can just play like a 9-cost and start pressuring life more. Both are good. If you get to go second, this matchup kind of plays itself. But going first, it's pretty rough. I won't lie. This matchup can be a start off going first into a very good rally player. They still have to hit their curve. And if you hit like a Lucky Roo or a Marco on 5, it's manageable. But generally speaking, they are favored if you go first. Anel, you're going second, so you can develop Rush Shanks before they develop any of their big bodies. Rush Shanks is important because it brings their 10-cost Anel down to 10k for your own KO Shanks. It's not just a little hard if you do not see your bosses, but because their bosses don't remove yours, but yours removes theirs, you will generally win the trade if they're playing full starve. If they're playing more aggressively, it's significantly harder. You need to develop like a 4-cost Shanks and start playing your early board. Aggro Shanks, you kind of have to play like they're, unless you know this player in particular, you want to play like they're playing Starve, because if you develop like a 4-cost Shanks early, it could get punished. So just hedge your bets. If you think they're playing aggro, go for the 4-cost Shanks into like Marco and just go wide at them. If you think they're playing stall, skip all that and go for bosses. It usually works out. And then in mirror, you go second, so you can develop the first Rush Shanks. That usually decides the matchup. Also, with my specific list, I can develop Dragon on 8, and that applies under pressure. That really sets me up for a win going into 10 with Rush Shanks. Very, very strong combo. Solid. Now, for the matchups I'm going first in, the simple ones are Buggy and Purple Luffy and Bonnie. Buggy loves first. Obviously, this matchup sucks so much that it really doesn't matter that much. A good Buggy will always beat a good Shanks unless there is an absolutely insane low roll on his side. Purple Luffy, you go first to disrupt their Luffy Taro on curve. Generally speaking, that will bone them as they are an aggro deck, and when an aggro deck misses their curve, it is rough. And then Bonnie, you're going first to throw off Cavendish on 5 into like some, or Tashiki on 3 into Cavendish on 5 into like Cody Jones. That's a really hard curve for us to handle, in my opinion. And if you do not have removal for their 5-drop, it's hard. But when they're playing Cavendish on 6, and then you can just Beckman it right away, that's great. That usually solves the issue. It also sets you up for a Marco on 5, and with a Hongo to remove their first Tashigi, for what it's worth. If you can go Hongo, Marco, Beckman, you're probably in the clear for that matchup, I would say. And now for the weirder ones. Kuzan, Koala, and Kid. These decks all like to go second. So the reason I take first is because these decks play a very, very precise curve going second. Kid, for example, really wants to go Hawkins into Kuma into A-Cost Kid. But mainly they really want to go Hawkins into Kuma. If they go Hawkins into Kuma, while they are developing bodies and kind of removing your life, they're not actually applying pressure. Because our leader effect, why is it big on this side? That's so annoying. Okay, their leader effect is, or our leader effect is minus 1,000 power every turn. If on 4 they play Hawkins and swing 5, we have -1, and we can play our 4-cost Shanks. And then on next turn they can play Kuma and swing 5/5, and we have leader effect plus block. And now we're going into late game, right, 7 Dawn, with all of our life, and we haven't given a single card to counter. And that's really good. That is more than enough to win this matchup, in my opinion. you are going to be like in the clear. And now they have to work to burn your life. And now we can focus on like Beckmaning. We can Beckman their Hawkins. And then we develop a 5-cost. We have our leader swing, a 6k and a 7k to their 7k whatever. And then on 8 they'll play Kid, which sucks, sure. But by this point you're probably at like 3 life, and then you can play 9-cost Shanks for cheap. And then you'll curve into a Rush Shanks or KO Shanks very, very cleanly. This matchup is totally doable going first. And I much prefer going first, because going second, they're still going to play Hawkins, Kuma, Kid, or you're going to play, they're going to play Hawkins on 5, into Law, into Kid. And all these turns, they're swinging 6k with Leader. So you are, like, artificially losing life, you're losing extra life in the long run, because although you threw them off their curve, they're still playing that same difficult curve, but they're just getting extra 6k swings at you when you're having to give life or give cards. And that makes the late game much worse for us. So I take first in this matchup. Same with Koala and Kuzan. Kuzan wants to play 6-8. They want to play the 6-drop Kuzan or Jozu into Garp. And if they don't hit that curve, that really screws them. But if they do hit that curve, you have leader effect to get out of a majority of their leader swings. This works less well because they have the Sengoku, so on 4 they might just play Sengoku and swing 6 at you, which is tough. But also if they're going first, they can go like 8k swing into like Sengoku plus 7 or Cavendish plus 6. And then on 7 they can play, Sakazuki and then attach it on a leader and swing 6. And then on 9 they're playing Garp and swinging 6. And in these late game matchups, these 6k pings are going to dwindle your hand or dwindle your life. And you're not going to be able to go for as long as you want to win the game. When you get to 10, you will win these matchups if you have enough life, because you remove their board and develop a bigger, more threatening one. Koala, same with 0-2. They want to play Hack into Kuma/Robin into Dragon. And they're not swinging, they actually are going to be swinging at your leader this entire time for her effect. So you don't have to worry about dealing with, having to give counter or extra life, because they're going to burn your life when you play your bosses late game. And if you take second, they're going to get those 6k swings, and you have to defend that life. Because in this matchup, you want to play a Rush Shanks, you want to play a KO Shanks. Can I actually just bring the leader up big? Probably can, right? If I just scroll down, where's Koala? Yeah, here we go. You want to, when you're playing an original cost of 8 or more character, you're taking a life. You want to play a Rush Shanks, so you can defeat their board and Beckman their Kumas and Beckman their Robins. Because Beckman is your best body in this matchup. It is a 7-cost 7k. It's right under their life-taking threshold, and it's hard to get value out of it if you don't have a Rush Shanks on field, because you're just not hitting anything of value besides like Karasu and Hack. And those cards just don't matter that much in the matchup. So yeah, I take first to keep them on their curve, so I have as much life as possible entering the late game, so I can still develop my bodies and not have to worry about their life-stealing effect. So yeah, this is my matchup chart. Now if you wanted to take a more simple approach, you would do this. Your most control players, most people in general, will recommend this. Kuzan, Koala, and Kid, they will say go second for. I go first in these matchups, but I'm not going to lie, it's more experimental, and while it has worked for me, it might not work for everyone, and it might be the players I'm facing into, or my approach to the matchup that makes it better this way. But that is definitely, certainly what I suggest for people who play this matchup. And these are also decks people struggle with. So, in my opinion, can I make... Oh, there we go. That helps a little bit. What if I post a little more? There. Sure. In my opinion, for these matchups, you should be taking first. People who take second, I think, just generally have less success. So, yeah, that's sort of my take on Tank Shanks, as well as your matchups. Just in general, remember that for things like Buggy and Blackbeard, a lot of these matchups you are playing the aggressor, and something like Purple Luffy or Rayleigh, you want to slow down the match. You want to play passive. You need to play the opposite of what your opponent's doing and use your leader effect to disrupt their curve. That's where Shanks is at his absolute best, is where your opponent is doing what they're doing and only being able to swing 5 at you because they do not have the dawn to do more. So, yeah, that's my take. Also, there's a world where Luke Nami might actually be better going first. I legitimately just do not ever see this deck anywhere. It's beyond me at the moment. I'll try to get some more testing into it here soon so I can give a more confident example, but I'd probably suggest second. Yeah, that's that. That is my opinion on your matchup chart. Let me also let me pull up like a favorite chart as well. Give me 1 second to put that together. Okay, so let's talk about matchups. For reference to the chart, this is OP12 Tank Shanks. The tiers are separated by percentages as well as name, and they are ordered from left to right as well. The closer to the right, the less favored they are. So, very favored, Anel. Anel is basically auto-win. This matchup's really, really hard to lose. Your bosses are just bigger and better than theirs, and they can't fight your bosses without losing the ability to play their own. Because it takes at least 2 Dawn for them to swing into your Rush Shanks if you have them on the field. And, like, at least 1 to swing into KO, I think. Yeah, with, like, 10 cost Anel. And, like, again, you're saving it from those swings because they're tiny. If they're playing, like, aggro Shanks, and if they're playing aggro Anel, and it's, like, catching you off guard, the matchup moves down, like, a little bit. But, in general, this is very free. Same with Kuzan. Kuzan just doesn't... Kuzan's bosses are very small for us, and with 9-cost Shanks, like, we're getting the 2k swings over theirs and playing it for 6. You're getting those 10k swings into the AK bodies, and while he does have a lot of card retention and card cycle, he does not have that much card draw. As soon as you start hitting into that hand, those hits are going to, like, he's going to lose those cards. Late game, he loses his hand pretty fast because he has to save his board, and like a Garp Kuzan combo is -2. Garp Sakazuki is, neutral, but that's not enough, right? If you respond to that with the KO Shanks, and then they have to Red Rocket, and then they can't develop more board, and if you play another KO Shanks after that, they just lose. Up next, is Koala. If you go first, they just can't hit you hard enough to stop a Rush Shanks from going down, and after Rush Shanks is down, you can just Beckman spam all of the Robins and Kumas away and just kill them slowly. It can be a little scary, but I don't think this matchup is significantly difficult in really any sense. You just have to be kind of comfortable with countering for life and playing a little lower than normal and recognizing that your lethal is never going to, your lethal is not going to be as soon as you think it is. They are going to have heals, they are going to have Waxing Fist. They are a turtle deck. But if you're planning for 6-cost Robin and know what 2 cards you want to trash beforehand and aren't getting caught off guard with it, often when I'm playing against this deck, I just always have a plan for what to trash for 6-cost Robin. It's I'm ready for them to play at any moment, and I know what 2 cards I want to get rid of. And I think that just making the right choices in that moment specifically is the most important thing for this matchup, as well as knowing how many bosses you can safely play and seeing enough Beckmans. But with 7 searchers, you're just, seven searchers, you are going to see enough Beckmans to get through. Up next is Bonnie. Going first, this matchup's incredibly easy. You just kind of hit your curve, and then they just don't, they can't do a whole lot. If, you see enough boss monsters, you're in a good spot. If they want to be playing a boss monster, and you can get 3-cost Ashiki out early, if they're not going boss for boss with you, they definitely lose. And if they are not developing 3-cost Ashigi along with those bosses, they also mostly just lose to KO Shanks. And if they're playing Kid variant, they're definitely screwed. If they're playing with Mihawks, which they probably are, that body just isn't a lot of value for them, really. Mihawk just gets to KO Shanks, and Koshiro doesn't protect anything but Cavendish, and that's only from KO. So Beckman gets through that very easily. Green Yellow Law gets boned by both... Well, first of all, 2-cost Beige dies to Marco, and then the rest of their 6k bodies get hit with Lucky Rune Beckman as soon as they come down, completely cutting out their relevancy. Even if 2-cost Beige is on the field, you just tuck them in life. Alleviating as much pressure is what's important in this matchup. You will go longer game better than they will, and once you start chaining 9-cost Shanks, there's not a whole lot they can do. Besides Bonnie, these are just decks that can't effectively remove your top end without developing their own board, or losing a lot of their Dawn in a turn. So that's why these matchups are very, very favored. They also just usually can't aggro you down beforehand. they're playing for a late game you will beat them in, basically. Down here in favorite tier, 60%, 70%. Still usually going to win, but something might go wrong. We have Yellow Green Yamato. They can kind of aggro if they go second in like Ipponmatsu, or not Ipponmatsu, Toniyasu into like a banished 10k swing. You're probably cooked if your hand's not great. It's tough. If you take second though, it's pretty free. If you're hitting enough blockers and they're not hitting triggers or removal, you're good. Even if they are hitting triggers, if they're not hitting like a ton of triggers, you're golden. Purple Luffy still relies on Luffy Taro and like 8 cost Katakuri, and those are just really shallow 8k bodies that we can get through with 9 cost Shank spam. Works more than well enough. It's pretty solid. They also take their own life a lot, so if you can pressure life early, you can kind of force them off curve. And without a lot of bodies for them to put in life with Linlin, they're losing value off that play if they try to do it, right? You will generally beat this matchup just through boss spam. It can be close, but I would still say it's pretty favored. Sakazuki's up next. 5 cost Marco handles this matchup pretty handily. It's a little harder than... It's also... It's harder to deal with their removal than it is with Lucci, because Lucci is all KO based. However, they also only have 4 life, so you can get away with decent early lethals. And their cycle, while makes their deck very consistent, their deck is just generally weaker than Lucci due to not having that extra life. They can't go for, forever like Lucci wants to do. So like you're not as worried about infinite Mancha or Rebecca. Sakazuki is a more aggressive deck, and we do decent into the kind of aggressive removal style that they play for. I'm also gonna make a quick change and just bring Lucci up here with him. Lucci, like, especially being off the 10 cost Kuzan build, down with Luffy out of the meta, you can handle this deck just fine, really. There's not a whole lot they can do once you start spamming 9 cost Shanks, and if you remove their Jack, like, remotely on curve, you're in a good spot. If your opponent's not playing 10 cost Kuzan, you can just Shanks their Jack, and that really hurts them. And if you're hitting your Beckwins and your Lucky Roos and just keeping their combo pieces off the field, you're in a good spot. Next to Purple Luffy, going second, this matchup's really easy. You can just Divine Departure their Sanji Pudding on 6, or like Yasop even instead of like Beckman. Yasop plus Beckman to remove their Sanji Puddings. I don't see this matchup as much of a struggle. A lot of the time, you're just keeping their board clear, and for every Sanji Pudding you remove, that's like one less good thing their deck can do. And they can't afford to Luffy Taro into you, because once you start spamming 9 cost Shanks, they just lose that battle. Their bodies are not big enough to reliably hit that, and stuff like Igloo just really ruins their restanding Luffy, same with the 4 cost Shanks. It's kind of just, it's a tough matchup for them, I think. Down here, in slight favorite tier, 51 to 59, you will win usually, but it's more of a pilot difference than it is a deck difference, so just keep that in mind. But on equal pilot, if you and them are equally skilled players, you should be favored. We have Blue Yellow Nami. Oh god, excuse me. Yeah, I don't know. This one's kind of weird. It's very, very pilot and deck dependent. If they're playing for 7 cost Odin, that's fine, because you can just 9 cost Shank spam them. If they're hitting a lot of kids and Red Rocks, it's tough. And with how much card draw they have, they definitely can. But they also kind of brick, and when you swing at their board, like, they really rely on that plus 2k to leader every turn as part of their counter. So when you're just swinging at their board, there's not a whole lot they can do. And if you stick a big boss, you will usually just win. If you stick a big boss, you're not in a terrible position, of course, right? Like, that is your win condition, is sticking a boss and being able to survive the next couple turns with it. Rayleigh, if you go second and you see Lucky Roo, you will win. Slightly favored is more in the case that they go first or they see a very good curve. If they know what they're doing, like, a good Rayleigh player is very different from a bad Rayleigh player, and I think a very good Rayleigh player would have a better shot, but I still think it's hard for them to get through Lucky Roo and Beckman, and Marco, and Divine Departure, right? And late game, like, if you get a Rush Shanks down and you have the life to do so, you just kind of win. There's not a whole lot they can do. Up next is Green Zoro. Similar to Yellow Kid, I've kind of struggled with these two matchups personally, but I still do believe they're very favored. Not very favored, but very, very slightly favored. Green Zoro, you're just going to be pinging 6s, really. they have a lot of 2Ks, but they really like to those 2Ks are purely counter, and a lot of the bricks in their hand are too expensive. You're talking like Mihawk and the 3-cost event and Tashigi. So like a majority of their hand is usually bricks because they don't have turns to de-brick. And by swinging 6s constantly, you're going to be ripping the few 2Ks they actually see. Zoro is consistent in seeing the pieces they need to, but they don't want to be searching for 2Ks because you never want to be searching for 2Ks, right? Especially because their searchers are not like bricks. When us turning an event into a 2K is great, but them turning like a Perona into a 2K isn't that worth it in the end. They obviously want to be digging for something better. They want to be playing Mihawks and Tashigis. And if they're prioritizing 2Ks, that means they're not getting as many plays. So just kind of slam 6s. Make sure to swing with everything all the time. 4-cost Shanks is a swinger. He's very important for the matchup. If you see it, this matchup is significantly better. Probably closer to like here. If you don't, it's probably worse. So that's kind of why he's just right here. I generally don't think this matchup's too bad, but it's definitely the scariest OP12 matchup there is right now. Of the leaders that came out this set. Up next, we have Yellow Kid. If you go first, they can't apply a ton of pressure if you play your like curve well. If you curve like 4-cost Shanks into Beckman, you're golden. And have boss monsters to back it up as well. Just make sure to play around Hawkins and don't like overcommit to a lethal that might not happen. Definitely try to fight for board. If you can keep their life face up as well, instead of like if they have like 2 face up life cards or like 1 and you just don't hit them, you force them to heal to get something blocker again, and that can be a really big struggle for this deck sometimes. You know, their heals are kind of expensive. 7-cost Law and Kuma are both -2 in hand, and that makes it harder to defend their board. And with Marco to answer 2-cost Beige, this matchup's significantly easier. Down here we have Smoker and Mirror. Mirror is just whoever goes second wins. If you go second, it's like here. If you go first, it's like down here. It sucks. Smoker's a bit more of an interesting case. I figure this matchup's probably more favored than 50-50, but I haven't played into it a lot, and I don't want to give like false advice. So on paper, this matchup feels kind of mid. Smoker, like if they see their Tashigis and their Koshiros, it's really hard for us to remove a 5-cost Smoker in this list because we don't have like Otama Beckman or something. But if they don't, like they can't answer your bosses. So it's all about how much life you get to 10 with, as is most matchups. If you get to 10 non-safely with most of your life, you're probably in an okay spot. Otherwise, this can definitely be tough. Now for our 3 really bad matchups, starting down here at Buggy, this is just auto-lose. A good Buggy will always be a good Shanks because Croc-Hawk, Promo Buggy, and Time-Cost Buggy disable pretty much every aspect of our deck. That is usually pretty multifaceted. They just kind of hit all of them very well. It's very hard to win against a good Buggy if they're hitting their curve. And Buggy's very consistent between Crocodile Mihawk and normal Mihawk and 4-cost Alvida and the Cross Guild events and the Galdino event. It's unlikely that a good Buggy will not see their curve if they're playing appropriately, and if they see their curve, you just kind of lose. Going second makes it slightly more manageable, and you kind of just want to spam 4-cost Shanks, Marco, and Yasop. If they use Promo Buggy, you can go for 6-cost or the 9-cost Shanks for 6, but generally speaking, you are just cooked in this matchup. Teach is manageable. You kind of just have to see your Marcos. See your Marcos is pretty easy because you can just spam 6s and save them from removal. Try to save your events in this matchup for your Marcos, but do keep in mind that besides Rush Shanks, your top end is mostly useless. And Dragon as well. Dragon's good in this matchup. He definitely helps. This is definitely closer to the 30 side of this than the 39. Or sorry, 39 than the 30 side. Like, this isn't like an awful matchup, but I still think it's definitely a tier below something like Blue Purple Luffy. And speaking of Blue Purple Luffy, this is very dependent on what list they're running. If they're doing like the Don Quixote package, it's closer to like here, just because that list is kind of slow, and we have a lot of bosses that remove theirs, and they are going to be answering their own. Just remember to Beckman their Rosinantes and 10-cost KO Shanks their Dofis. If they're running like the Rush Luffy package, it's a little bit harder. I found that they ramp less often with that package. I don't know why, but a lot of the Luffys I played into it, I've played into like good, half dozen maybe, and they just do not hit their triple ramp that often. It's very unlikely in my experience. And if they're not hitting a triple ramp and they're not hitting like great things. Because again, Mihawk doesn't do a whole lot. It's not like before where they had Lin and Katakuri. Now they really just have their Rush Luffy's. And you can KO Shanks those and try to pick them board. Just remember to counter the small swings early game. Sort of like Blackbeard, right? You don't want to be dealing with a big 10k swing later when you have 2 life, right? You'd rather have like 4 or 5. So giving your early game pieces 2 to 6k swings with your leader ability works out very well. Just keep in mind that the swings late game are going to be large. And yeah, that about summarizes my view on the matchups for this meta, updated with that specific list. Thank you, Karkazoku, for the deck builder. This is a great service to the community, and it's very, very helpful to be showing off stuff like this. Let's hop back into the deck list and do the little outro bit. Okay, so yeah, I've enjoyed this video. That was kind of my approach to what I consider a more proper OP12 guide would be. I'll have some more gameplay here soon. Again, it's kind of settling back into things, getting ready to record longer amounts of content, with better times for myself. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, let me know down below. And let me know what else you guys want to see. I want to approach Control and Aggro again here soon. But also, what do you guys want to know for OP13? Is it just, do you guys want to see more Shanks? Do you guys want to see, like, Red, Blue, Ace, or Roger, maybe? Like, what decks you guys going to be playing? Like, what should I, as a content creator, be showing off for that meta, I guess would be the question. Because I do pay attention to my analytics, and I try things here and there. Like the Velvety video yesterday did horribly, and I didn't expect it to do great. It was a quick video to keep my upload schedule somewhat consistent, just because I didn't have a lot of time yesterday. But yeah, let me know what you guys want to see. Going to OP13, I will say it's very unlikely I'll be competitively playing Shanks in that meta, unless revelations are made. I don't think this deck's gonna be very good. You are just really bad into all of the new decks. It's a struggle. There's a world, like, I'll try stuff. I'm not gonna give up on them, but I find it unlikely. Outside of that though, like, I don't know what you guys can be playing, really. What should I be making content for? And that's really the question. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you tomorrow with some new Shanks content. Goodbye.